Welcome back to the Sports Vault. Jersey Joe and Big Shot Rob here, and we're taking you into our baseball segment. The season is going to be here before we know it, and we're going to keep on talking a lot more baseball until we get to the season. But the first thing is, anyone who listens to the show regularly knows how big of an anti-steroid guy is. So I almost lost my mind when I saw this story. And the big thing is Barry Bonds is back in baseball, and he will be a guest instructor for the San Francisco Giants. And oh boy, Barry Bonds, he's the guy I want around my team. Buster Posey said he wants to talk hitting with Bonds. Bruce Bochy said the players should feel comfortable approaching any instructor we have here. That's just all great, isn't it? Not even close. Bonds is a poison. If I was a manager, I wouldn't want this guy anywhere near my team. I wouldn't let him park his car in my parking lot. It's just mind-boggling to me how you would want this person around your team. This guy ruined the game of baseball. He's not alone, but he's one of the people who ruined the game of baseball. He cheated, he lied, he was just an embarrassment to the game on and off the field, and you want this guy around your players. Boggles my mind. I would never. And here's the thing I think about too is if Bonds can get back into baseball when he ruined the game and he lied about it so definitively, why can't Pete Rose get back into baseball? Pete Rose loves the game more than anybody does. Pete Rose didn't cheat. He gambled on the game, which is, there's no excuse for that either. But he didn't cheat and ruin the game by any means. His statistics are some of the best we've ever seen. So I don't understand if Barry Bonds is able to get back into the sport when he's caused more damage to the game long term, why can't Pete Rose? That's the way I see it. Barry Bonds should not be involved in the game in any aspect if Pete Rose can't. And I would like to hear a defense from somebody about that because I sure don't understand. And it just really bothers me that this isn't really being talked about in the media because I think Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, all those guys, they've caused irreparable harm to the game long term. You have to throw all the statistics out, the championships, everything. They just don't mean anything anymore in baseball. It's such a great sport, but they've ruined it. They really have. When I watch baseball, it doesn't mean as much to me anymore because I just know that all the good stuff that the guys like Harmon Killebrew, Mickey Mantle did, it's just been devalued by these guys. The home run, I'm a huge stats guy, but the home run record, everything, all the stats in baseball, they've got to go out the window because these steroid guys like Barry Bonds have ruined the list. It all needs to be cleaned up, and I think it just shows such low integrity and respect for the game that you would bring a guy like this into your team to talk to your players. I mean, what's Buster Posey going to say? Hey, Barry, can you give me some tips? Sure, Buster, why don't you go and juice up? It really helped me be a better baseball player. I mean, it's just embarrassing to me. It really is. I've considered Bruce Bochy a pretty good manager, but I think that this is just such a bad move. There's no excuse for it. As you can tell by this little rant, it drives me crazy, the steroid thing in baseball. It's really ruined the game for me, and a lot of people as well. And you never hear the big ESPN guys like Buster Olney. They vote for the guys like Bonds on their Hall of Fame ballot, which the day they get inducted into the Hall of Fame is the day I never watch a baseball game again in my life. But I just think it's a terrible message to the game. The game's already damaged enough, and now you have this guy coming back into the game. But that's my take on it. Rob, as a not as angry guy about the steroid thing, why don't you give us your take on Bonds being involved?
I think he's going to be a cancer to this team, Barry Bonds. This is a guy that got caught with steroids. You know what? He embarrassed your franchise after being caught with this. And I don't want to bring him back in the first place. You know what? All he can teach these guys is how to juice up. Because you know what? If Bonds never juiced late in his career, what does he have to prove with his swing and all that? He was a good player before roids, but when he started taking them, had a fast swing and all that. But back. You know what? He's a disgrace to baseball. Complete disgrace. You know, he doesn't deserve that record whatsoever. When I look at that record list, no matter what, Hank Aaron's at that top of that home run list. He does not whatsoever. And then with Pete Rose Joe, and you know what? Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. All-time leader in hits. He deserves to be there. He didn't cheat the game. He got every other person does. He didn't need roids like Barry Bonds. And you know what? When it comes to something like this guy deserves to be on this field. He doesn't deserve to even be part of the Giants organization. And I think this is very important to bring them back.
I love a Big Shot, Rob. You're getting fiery over there. I love seeing the energy come out of you when it comes to this. As you can see, I mean, we talk about the steroid thing all the time on this show. We're very passionate about it because we love the game of baseball, and it really has. I'll say it, and I say it all the time. Steroids have ruined the game of baseball. They've ruined the experience for all the true fans, and I don't even consider the guys at ESPN to be true, respectable fans because no true fan who respects the game in its history would ever consider Barry Bonds, any of those guys, to be Hall of Famers. Not in a million years. And Rob, let me ask you, do you think the average fan, I mean, when ESPN puts up these lists and they include the steroid guys, when I see it, my eyes don't even go to it. I just go to the legit guy I know is clean. But what do you think the average fan thinks when they look at the home run records?
I think a lot does Hank Aaron. When they look at these guys with roids, they don't deserve to be there. And that's why when I look at the votes nowadays, Joe, every year for the Hall of Fame inductee, and they're just going higher and higher, these steroids people, it's like, what are you being there for?
Yeah.
Because they're going to bring in, and they're going to have to induct these people. It's just complete disgrace. There should be the greatest one on that list. You know, there's a complete disgrace to baseball, and why we get aggravated. You know what? We admire some of these players. We admire Derek Jeter who haven't taken roids. You know what? We want to be like these people on the field. We grow up in baseball sport. We love ruin the game.
Absolutely. I mean, and if me and Big Shot Rob ever get a vote, you can get promise on us that we're never voting those guys in. But going on in our baseball thing, spent a lot of time on that. Feels good to get that off your chest, doesn't it, Big Shot Rob? So we're going to do our AL East preview, and it's a great division. It's been one of the most premier divisions in baseball. So many good teams, but we're going to start it off with our local New York Yankees. A lot of additions this offseason. Brian McCann from the Braves. They've needed a catcher since when Russell Martin left. I think you saw how big of an impact he had on that team. Brian McCann is one of the best catchers in the game. Love that pickup. Jacoby Ellsbury is coming over from the Red Sox. I'm not as sure on that one. I mean, he's got to prove to me that he can replicate the season he had a few years ago. Hasn't really come down to earth since that time. Tanaka is a wild card. I mean, you look at the stats from Japan and they're phenomenal, but you just don't know if it's going to translate to the MLB. But there is a lot of optimism around him, so we'll see. Also, Brian Roberts and Kelly Johnson. Brian Roberts has always been a great player, but he could never stay healthy. We'll see what happens there. And Kelly Johnson's a nice utility man. Plug him in here and there to play with. But the main things I have to say with the Yankees is I just have a lot of concerns with pitching. You know, after CC, Kuroda, and then Tanaka, you don't really know what you're getting there, and I think that's going to be a big concern. I trust Robertson. I think he's going to do a nice job taking over for Mariano. Teixeira and Jeter, that's going to be big. How are they going to look this year? And I just think overall there's a lot of questions with the Yankees roster. It's old in some spots. It's kind of a mishmash roster. I mean, there's still a lot of questions we're going to behold. The AL East is very competitive, but Rob, give us your assessment of the Yankees.
I think they're a pretty decent team, Joe, but this year what I'm worried about is the relief pitching. I have not heard of any of these relievers before, really.
Yeah.
David is the only one I know. And, you know, he's going to be a good closer, but he worries me at times where he's always getting in trouble in the 8th inning sometimes. But you know what? They got a balanced outfield. Really good bunch. Brian McCann's a great pickup, especially for that low porch in right field. And Beltran's going to enjoy that, too. I'm on third base. Second base, Brian Roberts needs to stay healthy because you know what, Joe? His whole career, when he's been healthy, he's been an extraordinary player.
Very, very good player.
Kelly, third base. But the Yankees team is set. Their starting rotation, they got 3 solid starters. Nova, you know how he is. He starts off slow, and then he'll really heat up come August and September. And I really hope Michael Pineda comes back healthy.
That's good points. I mean, it makes you kind of grateful because the Yanks have had such a dominant bullpen the last couple seasons. I mean, they've had guys like Corey Wade come and go, Clay Rapata. I mean, they've had such a good bullpen over the last couple seasons, and we're not gonna know. We don't know what we're gonna get out of that this season, which could be a big concern. But that's it with the Yankees. The next one moving on is to the Orioles, and I think the Orioles have been one of the most active teams so far in adding new players. They've added Ubaldo Jimenez, Nelson Cruz. My big question with the Orioles is, how's Chris Davis going to follow up that monster year? I mean, before that season last year, we hardly knew anything about Chris Davis, and now then he just came on the scene and was unbelievable. I mean, could not miss. And so how is he going to follow up that big year? And the big thing is, they have a very good line. I mean, they have a core of Matt Wieters, Adam Jones, Machado, they have Davis, they have Cruz, and those are nice pieces. I mean, to build a lineup around those guys that they can hit, I mean, that's going to be a nice team to put out on the field. And I love Buck Showalter. I think he's done a fantastic job with that Orioles team. I mean, if the division wasn't so competitive, the Orioles would have made the playoffs again last year, but it's an incredibly tough division. But I think the Orioles have really done a nice job this offseason. They've added a ton of good pieces.
I see them, Joe. I think they might be the best team in the AL East.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
Picking up Nelson Cruz for $8 million is not bad whatsoever.
That's a great signing, yeah.
It just makes this outfield even better. But as you said, Chris Davis, we don't know what we're going to expect of him. We never really heard of him before last season, and he really has to follow a strong year. Pickup. I liked last year when they added when they picked up Bud Norris.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just a tremendous pickup come August and September. And this Orioles rotation, I think they have a solid rotation. And as you said, they should have made the playoffs last year, and they're definitely going to make it this year. But I do see them as the best team right now in the AL East.
Absolutely. I think they're going to be up there, too. The next one is the Rays, and you had the Orioles. I think the Rays are still my team to be of the best in the division. I think they have a downgrade from Rodney to Balfour as in the closer role, but other than that, I mean, they basically have the same roster. And I just think pitching-wise, there's really not a lot of teams who can go toe-to-toe with them. You have David Price, who's still there, Alex Cobb, Matt Moore, and Chris Archer. I mean, those are four guys you know what you're going to get out of every time they take them out. There's a lot of teams who can't compete with that. I mean, the Rays have just been like the model of consistency. They're kind of been like the San Antonio Spurs in basketball. They have a great guy who's leading them in Joe Madden, a lot like Greg Popovich. They have a stable core of veterans like Evan Longoria, and they are plugging in all these young guys like Will Myers came on the scene last year, phenomenal young player, and I just think you've seen it, and they're going to be competitive again. They're always going to be in it. I love the team. I think the Rays, I picked them to win the division last year. They made the playoffs, but I think this team, the Rays, I don't think you can ever count them out. I really don't.
No, you can. This team is very surprising every year, Joe. With the talent they have, they're always making the playoffs. They're always a team you have to watch because you know what? You fall apart come September, this team will just run it up and get their games, pick up games. And this team is just extraordinary. Their pitching's been great, but just surprising on that team. And some of the talent very low veterans sometimes, and just these veterans just amazes me with this kind of roster they have.
It really is. I mean, everybody they pick up, it just seems it works out for them. And I mean, I think that shows the system and the culture they have down there. It's a winning baseball culture, and I think the Rays, that everything they do down there, it's just fantastic. Next, you have the Boston Red Sox. We're not the biggest Red Sox guys, but we talk about them. They lost Ellsbury, so we don't know how that's going to affect them. But other than losing Ellsbury, not a ton of changes. They added A.J. Przinsky and Edward Mujica. Mujica is a good guy you can plug in. They have Yui Hara, who was phenomenal last year, so I don't see him losing the closing spot. But if something happens to him, you could plug Mujica in there and he'll be good as well. But overall, I just think last year for the Red Sox, you couldn't ask for a season where everything went their way. I mean, every single move they made, every player they brought in, everything went the right way for them last year. They won the World Series. They were the hottest team all year last year, and it carried over into the postseason, and they won it all. But the big thing for them is I just have a feeling that they're not going to be as good this year. The big thing is David Ortiz was a considerable amount of that offense last year. He's turning 38. He's getting older. I mean, you know, the steroids have helped him really prolong his career. They really have. I mean, the guy, when no one else on the Red Sox could hit in the postseason. This guy's hitting like 700, and he's 37 years old. It doesn't work like that. You don't get older and better. But if you're on the juice, it always works like that. So if David Ortiz is good again, that's going to be a big help. But I don't know. It's just the Red Sox. You can't count them out because they're the defending champions, but I don't know. Something tells me that they're just not going to have as good a year this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're going to have a hard time making the playoffs this year. This year, with the loss of Ryan Dempster also, I can't believe he's taken off this year. Best outfielder that they had. But this team is very David Ortiz. Let's see what he can do now at 38 years old. The rest of his team batted 100.
We've said it all the time. I mean, Colin Cowherd was the only one saying it, and we were echoing it. But everybody likes a little nice story with David Ortiz, but the truth behind it, you know what it is. You're just not going to say it. And the final team, which I think we both agree is probably the worst in the division, is the Toronto Blue Jays. They really, I mean, it's very surprising. They really added nobody to this roster. But I mean, last year was just all about injuries. The big thing for them is Edwin Encarnacion and Jose Bautista. They're going to have to carry the load on offense. Bautista's been dinged up here and there the last couple seasons. Encarnacion's really come on as one of the bright young stars in the MLB. This guy, I mean, he hits home runs like nobody. So those two guys are going to have to carry the load offensively. Dickey, Amaro, and Burley are the pitching pieces. Amaro was considerably out most of last year, and I liked Amaro. I have always liked him. I always thought he's been a really solid pitcher, but I just don't know what to make of it. It's a weird roster. It really is. And I just don't. I think the four teams we mentioned, the Yankees, the Orioles, the Rays, and the Red Sox, are considerably better than the Blue Jays are. And in a competitive division, they're better than some teams, but I just don't see. I still think they're the worst team in the AL East.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on this one. That trade that they made with the Marlins to get Burley, to get Johnson, did not work out whatsoever for them. They also got Jose Reyes in that trade, and Jose Reyes, his whole career, always on the DL. This team, the only person they have is Encarnacion and Jose Bautista, like you said. Otherwise, this team really doesn't have anything except. But this team is the lowest of lows in the AL East, and it just amazes me. My whole life, I've seen AJ Burnett have great careers, and you wonder, like, how is this that this team has never won whatsoever? And you know, in the GM of not having the right pieces to win a championship, this team will never be good whatsoever. And this team, I playoffs.
They got to go back to the Joe Carter days, for the days when Toronto was winning World Series and the titles. But I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I hate when teams bring back a recycle manager. If it didn't work the first time, why would it work the second time? It just same thing with Mike Brown and the Cavaliers. I just think that shows bad management from a perspective of owning. It's not going to work out, and I don't like when teams do that. So that's another one of my knocks on the Blue Jays. But that's going to do it. We're going to do a preview of each division as we get closer to the season. We kicked it off with the AL East. Who knows what we're going to do next week? The next thing is the Mike Trout deal. Now, Mike Trout, he signs a 1-year, $1 million contract. It's the largest pre-arbitration 1-year deal of all time. And if there's anybody who deserved to get the largest pre-arbitration deal of all time, I think it's Mike Trout, hands down. 22 years old. Let me give you his stats. In only 2 seasons as a starting major leaguer, he's had a batting average in 2012 of 346, 49 stolen bases, 30 home runs, 83 RBIs. Then last year he had a 323 batting average, 33 steals, 27 home runs, and 97 RBIs. He's finished in second in MVP voting both seasons. I mean, he really might be one of the just most unbelievably talented prospects we've ever seen. And this deal sets up an extension that you'd have to expect he'll get the largest deal ever. I mean, I think that the way, if you sign him young like this, which is a better move than doing like what the Mariners did with Cano, where you sign him and he's going to be like 41 years old at the end of it. Sign him when he's young. Mike Trout, I think he's going to get the largest deal of all time.
Oh, yeah, he definitely is. These stats are just amazing. And to come in second place behind Miguel Cabrera, that says a lot for this player. And you know what? I should have listened to my uncle. When my uncle first brought this up to me in fantasy baseball, look at this prospect, he told me the first day that he came up to the majors. And this guy extraordinary. He's going to get that paying him $30 million a year. And you know what? As I get older, I can't wait to see him to the end of his career. I think he's going to break a lot. And he might be one of the best baseball players of all time.
He really could. I mean, to do what he's doing at this young age, it's just remarkable. I mean, Miguel Cabrera is an older guy, but he's been unbelievable. But to finish in second place, it's just been so good. I mean, watching him play, it's a lot of fun. The Angels are just a weird team. We've got to see if they can put together. When we do go over that division, we'll talk a lot about the Angels, so I'm not going to go into that now. But Mike Trout, unbelievable young player. Fantasy-wise, when we get into that, we'll be talking a lot about him as well. The final baseball story I want to talk about, though, is the Baltimore Orioles again. A story this week that Orioles minor league outfielder Josh Hart didn't know who Frank Robinson was, so Buck Showalter, the Orioles manager, made him do a one-page report on him. And one thing I really like this story. Buck believes it's the player's duty is to know the history of their sports, and I love that. I mean, I pride myself on knowing sports history. Absolutely. I mean, you see the jersey I'm wearing now is the Kirk Gibson Detroit Tigers 1984 throwback jersey. There's not a lot of people walking around with that kind of stuff, and I just think anybody can tell you who Peyton Manning is and Tom Brady is, but it really shows you know your stuff when you could talk about a guy like Rick Barry, a guy like Alan. I mean, I was in class the other day, and there was a piece of trivia from a teacher, Alan Page, and when I answered that, he kind of jumped back. He said he's never had a student who knew who Alan Page was, and I think it just shows. I mean, especially in this industry, you've got to know the past, the history of sports, because the past tells you a lot about the future, and you need to know the old stuff, and it's just great stuff. It really is. I mean, you gain such a profound respect, and it kind of goes back to our steroid segment where maybe a lot of people in our age range don't really care as much because they don't understand the history of the game. But for somebody like me and Rob who love and truly understand the past of the game, it drives you crazy. And I think all young broadcasters, I mean, I think you've got to look at the history of the game. Like when I talk to some people, I'm surprised when they don't know about a guy like Rick Barry or a guy like Yvonne Cornwallis. I mean, I think you have to know the past, because in a competitive industry like this, anybody is going to be able to tell you about what's going on in the future, but it takes the special people who can tell you a lot about the past, and that's one thing we really pride ourselves on doing on this show. I don't think there's a lot of shows on this program who can tell you about the old stuff like Will Chamberlain, which we're going to get to in the next segment. So we pride ourselves on that, and I think this was a great story and a great learning experience for this young guy, because Frank Robinson is one of the greatest of all time, and every baseball fan should know about him. But that's going to do it for this segment. When we come back, we're talking a lot of football, some big stuff, so stay with us, and we will be right back.